Okay, well, I'm working right now. I'm sitting on top of a tractor here, and I got a wagon load of a brush that I need to haul down to the burn area. We're not burning anything today. We won't be burning anything for at least another month, but it's too dry for that now. We could start a bad fire, but forest fire. But anyway, um, I was just telling the property owner a story. I'm going to tell you the story because it's kind of funny. My grandpa Fournier, who passed away in 1996, my dad's dad, was very, very quick-witted. He was a very quick-witted man anyway, and I'll give you a little background to this story anyway so you can understand what it is. Um, my great-aunt Anne, my grandmother's sister, so my grandpa Fournier's wife, my dad's mom, my grandma, um, great-aunt Anne, who was a sister of my grandma, she married a man by the name of Jerry. I won't say his last name, but his first name was Jerry anyway. She married him in 1946 or 47 after the war. And Jerry was a veteran of World War II. Anyway, Jerry had flown airplanes in the war and stuff. That's what he had done. He'd been a pilot. Anyway, they got married in 1946 or 47. They were married for a long time. They had a family and everything, And then when Jerry was in his late 70s or early 80s, now him and my Aunt Anne belonged to the Legion, the Royal Canadian Legion. This is part of the story. Anyway, when Jerry was in his late 70s or early 80s, he took up with this woman who he met at the Legion. And this woman was married, and she was in her 40s, so she was about half Jerry's age. She was about the same age as Jerry's children, as Anne and Jerry's children. Anyway, he took up with this woman who he met at the Legion, who was also married. She was also married at the time. Anyway, they ended up together. The marriage between my Aunt Anne and Uncle Jerry came to an end, and that woman's marriage also came to an end, the woman Jerry took up with, who was in her 40s, and they ended up together. Anyway, as you can imagine, this caused a scandal in my family. People weren't too happy about it anyway. And I'll tell you the story anyway. I'm not going to show you the property here, really. You can see some trees behind me, but that's about it because I'm not really allowed to make videos here. I think I'm allowed to do this. They just don't want their property on video is all. So anyway, story's better anyway this way when you're looking at me telling the story and not looking at the property. But anyway, I'll tell you what happened. Like I say, my great uncle Jerry left my great aunt Anne. The woman he met left her husband, and then Jerry and this woman ended up together. Well, like I say, it caused a scandal in my family anyway. It wasn't, it wasn't really approved of. Anne and Jerry's children, who would be my second cousins, didn't approve of it. And really nobody in the family did, including my grandpa Fournier. In fact, my grandpa Fournier fought an awful lot of Anne, and it really bothered him. That was his sister-in-law, Anne, and it really bothered him that Jerry had done what he did, Anyway, my grandpa Fournier passed away in 1996, so this story goes back a ways, because my grandpa Fournier is part of this story. Anyway, I'm over to visit my grandpa Fournier. This would have been in the early 90s. And who shows up but Jerry with his girlfriend? My grandpa doesn't approve of any of this, mind you, but my grandpa was a nice man, and he was a very civilized kind of a man. And so even though he didn't approve, he wasn't mean or anything like that. He spoke to them nicely and everything else. The lady, or the woman, I should call her a woman, I won't call her a lady. I don't think she's deserving of that title myself, so I shouldn't say that. But she is a woman, so I'll call her a woman. The woman asked my grandpa would it be okay if she got some things out of his garden. He told her to go ahead, take whatever she wanted. So she's over in the garden anyway, picking vegetables and whatnot. And my Uncle Jerry is standing there talking to us. And of course, he's nervous because he knows that what he did really isn't approved of. He's not stupid. He knows that the family isn't too impressed with what he's done. How he broke Anne's heart and humiliated her, leaving her for this younger woman, and busted up 2 families and everything else in so doing. And so he's afraid of what we might say. So what he's doing is now he's talking continuously so that we can't say anything because he's afraid of what we might say. Now, we wouldn't have said anything. We didn't approve of it, but at the same time, it was their business, really. We wouldn't have said anything. But he didn't know that. And what's he doing? He starts talking about some guy who's in the Legion with him, in the Royal Canadian Legion. And Jerry was big on going on parade. He loved to go in the parades, when the Legion would march. Anyway, this guy that he was in the Legion with, he started going on about this guy and saying how incompetent he was and how stupid he was and he can't march in time, he falls out of rhythm, he falls out of time, he screws everything up. We're supposed to go one way, he goes another way. He's just completely useless, just a total idiot, screw up, whatever. He's talking away about some guy in the Legion, apparently, that doesn't march very good, is what it boils down to. It is therefore a screw up and an idiot and all the rest of it. And as he's telling the story, he was saying, we were out in a march one time, and he was falling out of formation, and he was doing this and doing that. And then we turned the corner, and what did he do? He went the complete wrong way. Messed everything up, he's telling this story. Anyway, Jerry and his girlfriend left. His girlfriend loaded up some bags with vegetables and stuff, and they left. And I turned to my grandpa, and I said, could you make head nor tail of that story he was telling? And my grandpa, without missing a beat, he says, oh, I don't know. He said, I lost them when they went around the corner.